Okay, I know you guys are probably tired of hearing about this, but I've got to make a statement about it. I do not, now that I know all the details, I can't stand with Nicholas Getty's response to Morris, uh, and let it be perceived that I in any way endorse it. I feel like now that I know all the details, it's a low blow. It is ad hominem attacks. It is clouding the issue, getting people's attention off the real thing and playing into the enemy's tactic of manipulating people's perception of the truth, getting their eyes off the truth and onto, well, this guy said, terrible things about this person, and therefore, now, I felt like the things that Nicholas Getty said didn't need to be said. It was low. It was below the belt. Totally uncalled for. And honestly, feels repugnant. And I did tell Nicholas this. This doesn't mean I'm severing our friendship or anything like that, but I told him it sounded like a Steven Anderson kind of thing, especially since this is not a backdoor revival where people who are not clear of the gospel are leaving because they're exposing that they are works. In that case, many solid grace people are saying, man, I can't stand with that. This is a bad witness. Can't have it. Okay, and I've made my mistakes on my channel too in the past, so that's where it's like I was hesitant to say anything because but this was an outright attack on a person. To call a believer a sodomite who has been justified, sanctified, and washed, regardless of the fact that he's got so, I'll get to that in a second, but it is a tough one because Morris has a backloaded works gospel and uses his orientation to garner sympathy that he can then that whole thing becomes a cover for his attacks on the gospel of grace while pretending to be grace and getting the sympathies of the grace people. And that, I understand, is what Nicholas is angry at, the hypocrisy. That the grace community seems to be standing with someone who openly and nakedly has a works backloaded gospel at this point, who brings railing accusations against the gospel and against those who contend for it, and has for a long time. Now, I've never brought Morris up in a video or commented about him on any walls. I'm not, I don't care about the orientation, but I believe it's used to get the sympathies of people who virtue signal. And look what he's doing. He's reaching out to a known wolf and begging him to put together another channel to launch accusations against the gospel and bring attacks against people's assurance and bring attacks against eternal security. That's what the guy does. And he's doing it in the name of love. And what's being signaled is, if you are on the team of love, this is the guy you follow. You follow Morris. Okay? And, I don't care about his orientation. For me, he's marked and avoided because of his backloaded works gospel and his attacks on the gospel. And yeah, there is constant drama there. He's unstable. Okay? That is, but see, Nicholas has muddied the water by taking the bait and responding in his flesh, whether he wants to admit it or not. And ultimately, I have to stand with the truth of the gospel and say, okay, Nicholas is right in the point he's bringing up, but the reason why he's arguing.
I'm sorry. He's supposed to be at Amy's now.
It's interesting. Every time I do a message about this, I get interrupted. Maybe I should. Well, anyway, let me finish it. I don't agree. And it is playing into that narrative, but I want to say this, that God uses all things too. And what God is doing is, see, backloaded works gospels are much more subtle. And we have a lot of people that have a backloaded work gospel that are not grace, that are posing as grace in the grace community, and they're the ones actually causing all the problems. And they have become increasingly focused on our group, and me in particular, with a virulent hatred. And in their offense, they're moving further and further away from the gospel. And that needs to happen so that people are clear and not confused anymore about in the ambiguity. The devil always hides in ambiguity. So God likes to have these, I call them Elijah moments, where it's clear. Okay, if you have another Jesus and another gospel, and a cursed gospel, then stand on this side. And if you are standing with the grace of Jesus Christ, even if you're found to be a sinner, if we seeking to be justified by Christ are found to be sinners, does that make Christ the minister of sin and invalidate our message? No, it does not. And see, we're required to stand with the truth first. Our love is the love of the truth. Because people don't receive the love of the truth, they're delivered over to strong delusion that they believe the lie. And what the enemy is doing in this hour is trying to get people to stand with their feelings rather than the truth. But God's using that situation too to produce harvest. There's always these little harvests. And right now, you see people like Ann Triplett, Susan Newmeyer, and others on Morris's wall reaching out to a wolf that they should know better. They know that they're allying with someone with a backloaded works gospel, reaching out to someone whose whole purpose is to attack the gospel of grace. And that guy hasn't really attacked me yet. I didn't even know who he was, this Trevor dying to live for Jesus, until the whole thing happened where his channel got taken down. But so it's not about me. It's about the truth of the gospel. They're letting wolves in. They're inviting wolves in. They're begging wolves to come in and calling them brother. While saying that either that we're not saved, or that, like Susan Newmeyer apparently says that the only evidence of our salvation is our profession. Okay? Yet she's calling out with Morris to reach out to a wolf. Why are you doing that? That is, we have no king but Caesar. And I did a message a couple of years ago that the works camp, whether it's works for sanctification, works for justification, and in some cases work for reward, would unite as a mob crying out, we have no king but Caesar, give us Barabbas, in their hatred and anger and offense, betraying everything they used to stand for. Susan Newmeyer used to stand for grace. She had solid messages about how we need to contend for the truth of the gospel, and not mix. And now she courts people that I personally know, because I was in a fellowship with her for a year. I know what she feels about these people and their gospel. But she's betraying all of her principles out of her offense. It's a mystery to me. I don't even understand it, actually. But really what it gets down to is she is one of these that makes the distinction between head and heart faith, and is showing that she is sympathetic at least to the backloaded works gospel, and is willing to ally herself in sympathy with it in reaching out to a known wolf. What more needs to be said? Yes, I totally disagree with what Nicholas Getty has done, okay? And he's got to work through that. But I'm not going to stand on the other side of the gospel because of my, issue with that. And this is all about, you have to step back and see what the enemy is doing. The enemy is trying to pollute the ground of the gospel so that there cannot be distinctions made. More and more, you won't be able to speak. If you speak the truth about the gospel and contend for it, you will be the enemy of a larger and larger group of people. And it'll all be in the name of love and sympathy, So that's what's going on. And I still, to me, Nicholas Getty is a brother. He's clear on the gospel. I know him by the profession of faith. In this instance, I feel like, it's a mess. But I also see on the bigger picture what the enemy is trying to do and how God is using it to clarify the truth. So in these moments where the spotlight is turned on something, it is sometimes time to speak to it and make it clear where you stand, And this is not about liking, I like Nicholas. I don't like what he just did. But this is not about winsome personalities. This is about who has the truth of the gospel. Now, you could say he's clouding the truth of the gospel by saying that someone is a sodomite who's a believer. But what he's saying is, look, he has a backloaded works gospel, which is no gospel at all. It's an accursed gospel. And he's standing on his own righteousness. But if he does that, then he's got to account for his sin. If you're standing in your own righteousness, you're standing in your sin. I know that through private conversations with Nicholas, I know that that's the point he tried to make. But he did it in a repugnant way. And that needs to be pointed out. We can't talk like that about people going forward. Just can't. However, it is true. If you're seeking to be justified by law in any way, you are in sin. You are under sin. You are condemned for your sins. And that's where the irony comes in. No one has a moral high road to be able to say, hey, these people aren't saved because they're not loving enough. Okay, so you're putting it on, you're making salvation a matter of law keeping, which is the law of love, supposedly, and excluding yourself as well. Okay, you may seem to be more loving, but have you kept the law? No, you haven't. That should be the point. We don't need to drum up people's past and all of that, because it is true. Our gospel is for everybody. And we don't want people coming in and saying, oh, these people have, the gospel of grace is okay for everybody unless you're divorced or an adulterer or a fornicator or this or that. And when you call out one thing like that, especially when the word sodomite is so emotionally charged in our culture, that's a bad move. It's just a bad move. And to say, oh, he's got a crush on that guy. No, I don't believe that. That's inappropriate, number one. Number two, you don't have grounds to say that. Just because someone says someone's dapper. That is an ad hominem personal attack, and it's below the belt. And it's unacceptable. And I had to say it publicly. Sorry, Nicholas, but that's where we stand with that. All right, take care.